Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Welcome back to the show. It's Steve Simonson. Hey Steve, how are we doing?
Hey, I'm doing well.
Good, good, good. So, what have you been up to recently? I seen you on the road a little bit. I see you. Last time I see you was Austin in August. Where you been since then?
Gosh, it's hard to keep track of me sometimes. I know I've been to Mexico. I've been to Vegas.
Hmm.
Probably another stop in there somewhere. But
Yeah,
just trying to get the ducks in a row for Q4.
yeah, yeah. Which is upon us now. So, obviously, you work at quite a large scale compared to a lot of sellers. People get the grace of learning a lot from you. What are some of the intricate things you're working on at the moment because of the scale that you operate at?
Well, I tell you that uh, I have a philosophy. It may be dumb, but I started it 2 decades ago, and I maintain it today.
Hmm.
Whether out of stubbornness or good mental practice, I don't know yet. But it's called zero-based budgeting, and we are very very cautious as we head into 2023
Hmm.
about what the discretionary income looks like for the consumers, what inflation looks like. All of these are pressure points, right? We're being squeezed by inflation on the supply side and the uncertainty, and then consumers are buying less discretionary stuff.
Yeah.
And what that means is Q4 is really a positioning time period for us to prepare for what's happening next year.
Yeah.
And where we're overstocked, we need to, turn some of that trash into cash. Where we are looking at, let's say, weak products with a weak profit profile, we try to think of each product as having its own balance sheet, its own
Hmm.
profit and loss statement, really more profit and loss statement. But the point is, if that item is not going to survive on its own, or doesn't have some sort of merit to it, then it's better to just whack that thing and move on to something else that has a stronger profile. So
Yeah.
this is really, all of these steps that I'm describing are about discipline,
Hmm.
right? Get your budget right. I know a lot of sellers may not use a proper and formal budget. Fair enough, but you better start from zero and then add on slowly from there to any cost you have, and then make sure the products that you have, you're treating them with absolute rigorous economic, scrutiny.
Yeah. So some of the discussions, fly on the wall discussions here. You obviously you're preparing for next year. Obviously that you're looking at the market. What's some of your rationales behind it? What have you looked at and gone, aha, this is why we're doing X, Y, and Z because this is coming, this coming, this coming. So obviously, because of the scale that you work at, it'd be great for sellers to understand some of the stuff that you believe to see in down the road that they can avoid falling into some of those traps as well.
Well, the first thing is, I have to make guesses or
Mm.
predictions based on whatever data or patterns that I see.
Yeah.
And I am a general believer that patterns are real and they
Mm.
often repeat themselves.
Yeah.
And having watched patterns build and then, kind of chaos ensue and then everything calm down, I'm confident this is just another pattern, right?
Yeah.
And so what we see happening is uh, general consumer level uncertainty. So, I don't know everybody's business out there, but in general, the units sold on Amazon are down.
Mm.
The dollars happen to be up a bit, largely due to inflationary pressures, right? So, there's this whole idea of shrinkflation, this term that, you used to buy a bag of chips or crisps, as they may say over there, but the bag's similar size, but there's less crisps in there. And they did that to just hold the price level or to make the price increase lower. All of those types of things are a reality. And those are
Yeah.
big companies who are responding to the impending kind of resetting of some of these inflationary pressures. So we're very, very sensitive on not having too much inventory. Last year we probably had a discussion around this time, and I said, inventory wins, have more inventory. And this year I'm saying you better be tight, you better be lean on inventory, because inventory could be an albatross
Mm.
going into next year. And it's not just me saying that. The pattern that I'm looking at includes guys like Walmart and Target, who also had too much inventory, and they are selling stuff at fire sale prices to burn through excess inventory. And I really want people to think about that in Q4, especially when you have this big lever where there will be an increase in consumer kind of spending, to make sure that you really think about what should you sell in Q4, what should you have on hand for Q1, and how predictable is it that you'll be able to replenish that inventory from wherever it is you're sourcing.
Yeah, and operating at your size, do you now a lot of your discussions focused around a recession coming? Is that how you focused on any new products, anything new that you launch is going to reflect that?
For sure, right?
Yeah,
So this is not. I've seen recessions before,
of
right?
course.
And we
You've
could
seen it,
call
yeah.
them technical recessions. We can try to talk our way through them. We could even have the positive attitude and go, "Gosh, I'm such a small fellow. This isn't going to impact me."
Mm,
And maybe that's true, right? But the truth is, if you don't prepare for um, a potential level change. And really, we're talking about when the tide's up, everybody's fat and lazy, and there's a lot of what I call slop in the gears.
mm,
For anybody who's ever driven a standard transmission, if you don't have a tight transmission, those gears, they feel sloppy. There's a lot of looseness in there. And I think that's how a lot of sellers and a lot of us run our business when things are good. You
yeah,
don't have to be as precise. And I'm saying now, you got to get tight. You got to get systems. You got to get procedures. Knowing your numbers is a trite, silly way to say things. And I say, know your numbers anyway, right? You must know your numbers. And not having a clear cost analysis on your chart of accounts, your basically your balance sheet that translates every single Amazon cost is it's a cardinal sin at this point. You better know your numbers.
mm, yeah. So what are some of your predictions for Q4 on your business? You look at last year's numbers, this year's numbers. Obviously, you're carrying less inventory. What are some of your predictions on the numbers? Are you thinking this year we're not going to do, X% as what we did versus last year? Have you got like some commonalities there where you've made these adjustments? So is your revenue goals, etc.
Yeah, I think if we are up at 10%, that's a win.
Yeah.
And I remember a recession going into 2008 where I had a company, it had venture capital backing and so forth, and we were up 17% when the industry was down 40%.
Mm,
This is related to housing. And it was hard to do.
yeah.
And it was frankly a miracle that you can have that disposition, versus your general competitive landscape. So that meant we were doing good and we were taking market share. But at the end of the day, it just became too tough, and that VC shut down that company.
Mm,
And fair enough, right? They look at it and it's like a financial instrument. They're like, looks like it's going to lose money for a couple of years. We don't want to do that. Let's kill it.
yeah.
And those are realities. So when you are you're your own venture capitalist, you're funding the company, you have to be very realistic about the cash in and cash out, and not get over leveraged. I definitely have concerns. We're lucky enough that we can get money from banks, which up until 9 months ago was very cheap.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so these days it's more expensive, and we sound like we're crying when we're paying 4 or 5% at a bank, because we were paying 1 or 2% a little while ago. But compared to kind of the open market methods of getting money, it's still way cheap.
Yeah.
And so that reality that money is getting more expensive should be weighed into making sure that your bets are properly sized. Don't bet, we call it bet the farm, you might say bet the house.
Mm,
If you bet everything on one season or one product, I think you're making a miscalculation, because nobody can predict what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going to happen,
yeah.
but I feel, right, this is where feelings apparently matter.
Mm,
I think that there's going to be bigger pressure on the consumer, and premium goods are already being whacked like crazy. Low end commodities are holding where they're necessities or essentials, but everything in the middle is a discretionary concept.
mm,
And if you're, I'll give you an example. In the pandemic, we had a bunch of standing desks, and we sold the crap out of them. And luckily, we got out of that business last year. It wasn't a calculus. It was just like, that business is done. We don't like that business anymore. But now you can't sell those desks. Everybody's got those desks. Everybody bought what they needed during the pandemic.
Mm.
for those types of big purchases for your home, office, retrofit, whatever. And so there's this idea that we jumped ahead 5 years on the internet, right? We were talking about it, a couple of years ago,
Mm.
was only true to the extent that we're now jumping back to where it's supposed to be. So that there's actually a downturn in total units being sold in many categories. I know there's exceptions. And by the way, this is not Steve, Mr. Doom and Gloom. This is Steve going, hey, I got a pretty good sense of reality. I'm not trying to back myself into a corner. That's what I'm saying here.
Yeah. And what about negotiating now with supply chain, because of the nature of what's going on with with the way that the market is shifting and the concerns in around consumer spend, etc. How does that impact on renegotiating with factories? Because they're going to be struggling as well, right? But they've got to still be in business. So is it harder, even with the ability of scale in terms of ordering at volume? Is it getting tougher and tougher to negotiate at factory level?
Well, it is getting tougher, but the variables are changing. And this is kind of a normal thing, right? The variables that you can discuss will change based on supply and demand, though, based on, your own ability to have stock. But when everybody's got stock, and, most of the factories we use are down 50% in China.
Yeah.
Right. I haven't done it's probably down, 30 or 40% in Vietnam as well. And, I haven't looked all the way around the world, but the average factory is down in pretty big numbers in China. So that gives us, their supply of orders are down. That means, they demand more, and that means we can negotiate. Currency has really, really changed.
Yeah.
And I cannot stress the importance of looking at currency and indexing that to your original pricing agreement. So that gives you one method of negotiation. The problem is they have their own, supply chain issues. And so, as raw materials go up, there's not much they can do, but as they come down, they can get better. And I expect that you'll see a lot of pricing coming down. For sure, shipping will be back to 2019 levels in Q1. And could go to new record lows by the middle of next year. So there will be some competitive stuff.
Let's break into that then. So
sure.
How such from your perception, how come that switch so heavily to go back to 2019? Because that's quite a big bit of a paradigm shift, isn't it, from where we were to there? So how does that come about, if we can unpack that a little bit?
So, everything I analyze, I just look at it from the very simple supply and demand equation, right? And there's this graphic that you guys can look up. You can Google. It's called the bullwhip effect, right? And the great example in the pandemic was, the consumer says, we're in a pandemic, I need toilet paper. And so they go to the retailer and they buy all the toilet paper. I don't know why. Maybe, I guess when you're hunkering down, that's the one thing you need. So then the retailer says, I'm out of toilet paper. They call the distributor and go, I need some more toilet paper. And all the distributors out now, and now the retailer's out, and you've got this bullwhip effect. Now the manufacturer's like, I got so many orders for toilet paper, I better order some more trees for toilet paper, right? And so this bullwhip effect kind of goes through the supply chain, never equalizing. There's no equilibrium at any specific level until time passes and everybody goes, you know what? I got enough toilet paper to last me a lifetime over here.
Yeah.
And that's happened with freight. There was so much demand, and the chaos of shutdowns and this and that was so significant that nobody could track where the containers were, and they couldn't get the containers back. And many of those were sitting idle in ports. And now that's not the case, right? The ports, even if there's a little congestion here or there, it's usually related to labor strife, right? Which is an economic indicator, by the way, for those tracking the pattern. And not a supply demand issue on containers. So containers are plentiful. That means prices go down and volume is dropping, right? I just told you that most of the factories we deal with are down 50%. That means now freight forwarders are going to be coming out with hat in hand instead of going, you'll be lucky if I pick that up for $25,000. Now it'll be like, I'll take that thing for, $2,500 and I will thank you for your business. Yeah. And that's just, it's a complete paradigm smashing.
Indeed. So that at least there's an upside there with what's going on here. We need to normalize and shift in these parts in the market. What about with material costs? Obviously, you were quite on that quite early with the increase in material costs because of the war and stuff. What have you seen in terms of patterns there? Are we seeing we see the lift up in some places, right? Not every piece of material is going to have a rise. It's related to the two main countries that are war that have that supply chain that are key that goes into products like petroleum and stuff like that. But what have you seen from that?
Well, you just mentioned this, but it can't be overstated. Like the
Yeah,
raw materials drive all of that
yeah,
equation, right? So if your raw materials are in low supply and high demand, you're going to face significant price increases, and that goes across the materials and the minerals and the petroleum components and things that we talked about in the springtime, probably
yeah,
that are a result of this war, and that's not going to clear up anytime soon. Um, I think you're still seeing automotive industry, for example. Ford, which is a pretty big brand, they can't get their Ford ovals, right?
yeah,
They're short 3 million Ford ovals or some crazy number. And this is a prediction that I'll make about the automotive industry that we'll try to tie back to sellers. But
yeah,
right now in the United States, and I think this is largely true in other countries as well, automotive costs are sky high. Used cars are in some cases worth more than they were 10 years ago because it's very difficult to get automotive stuff through the finished supply chain due to microchips. I won't bore you with all the details. That will be solved. Everybody sees this swing up and assumes, well, I better get one now because that's what's going to be. I guarantee you next year it's going to be a fire sale on these cars. I don't know if it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, but at the point it breaks through and they can finish millions and millions of vehicles that are sitting around or in various stages of production, there's going to be a glut of automotive stuff on the market. And this is what I would tell sellers. When you're facing a potential downshift in the market, this is where competitors, especially weak competitors that don't know their numbers, they get nuts, right?
yeah,
And especially if you're competing with a factory, which their real mission, if a factory's selling direct on Amazon, is simply to get the factory to turn over and cover whatever Amazon costs. So they're selling at what you would call an Amazon break even. They're adding whatever Amazon costs on, and sometimes they're even still below cost, in fairness, if you take into consideration paying the actual tariffs and duties on the product instead of kind of let's just say creatively getting through the system. Yeah. That there's a widespread amount of cheating and tomfoolery that happens in these cases. And I want you guys to know that, if your sellers or if your competition is kind of cheating the system, you better find some ways to, pivot or compete in a way that is not purely financial, because they will win on cheating. I go to jail if I cheat.
yeah.
And I'm talking about kind of anybody who's willing to bend the rules. It's not specific to one, country, but
I say
certainly
this to sellers as well: is that I use supplements. Not everyone in supplements are going to play that game,
right.
But there's a chunk that will, and often when you look and do the competitive analysis, you see that what they're doing, a lot of black hat stuff like that. I always say to people is that it's a choice. You either join them and play that game, which goes against your integrity, or you get out. Because it doesn't matter if you moan about them and what they've done is wrong and morally wrong. Cool. So you have to get out that product, or you play the game with them. What do you want to do? And that's often what it comes down to, is having that straight conversation. And it's hard for people that have invested so much time into it. And again, I'll say it again in case I get cancelled. Not everyone's in supplements. Scammers, I'm just using that as an example. But like we said, Steve, that's what you're up. Where does your moral compass sit? Cool. If you're morally upright and that's how you believe and you want to put your head on your pillow at night, then you're never going to compete against these people. Accept it, move on.
Yeah, I totally agree with Danny that all supplement sellers are scammers. That was your point, right?
Do you know what? Someone's going to TikTok that, or they're going to take 6 seconds as this whole video, and they'll run that bit out.
Well, that's great. I can't wait to be canceled. It would be a real
It'd be a pleasure.
Easy thing for me in my schedule.
Yeah.
No, you're quite right. But the truth is, if you're if you are going to mud wrestle, somebody's going to get dirty.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to get dirty, to be honest.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so know the business you're in. That's okay.
Mm.
And, sometimes you have to throw elbows. I'm a big fan of, I don't mind breaking rules, but I'm not breaking laws, right?
Yeah.
Amazon can tell me what they want to do, and I will take my own risks with Amazon policies where I need to.
Mm.
Um, but a policy is not a law, right?
Yeah.
Just because Amazon says don't manipulate the sales ranking, it's like, okay, so you don't want me to sell stuff, or you do want me to sell stuff?
Yeah.
And then you watch Amazon, do all kinds of things. It's like, to compete in some categories, you're going to have to get very aggressive with marketing. And
Mm.
I never want to cross a line where I can be suspended permanently.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody has their own kind of threshold of pain and risk. But the truth is, if you are facing, kind of a very competitive profile, and this is what's happening, like
Mm.
right now, we will sell inventory at sometimes, at a loss if we are overstocked on that inventory.
Yeah.
Because what we don't want to happen is to carry that inventory for a year while we are waiting for the
Storage
market to
fees,
recover.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the mathematics is the way you figure out all of these problems,
Yeah.
right? You just simply do the math. Well, what if I have to, hold on this stuff for 12 or 18 months, even in my own warehouses, even 3PLs? What does that cost look like versus just blowing it out now and taking my pain now? And I will tell you, in almost every case, you should take your pain faster and have a
Yeah.
lean, situation, and more cash and less problems.
Yeah, because again, time's something you can't get back. Outside of money, you can't get back time. So on that, like what you just said, you've got to be ruthless with those decisions. Kill it now, take the pain, move on. Talking about moving on, as we come up towards the end of wrapping the show, predictions for next year. What are you bullish on? The way people should. We've already discussed cutting costs in the business, being ruthless on your numbers, understanding what the market wants as well, and then supplying to the market. But anything else that we can add before we go?
Well, I think this is where people are going to really try to apply disciplines around systemic operations of a business. We've always been big believers in having systems that run the business and people run the systems, and we really do practice that. Our HR stuff is in our system. Our daily SOPs are in the system. Like, all of these things are systemic, and we're seeing on that side of the landscape, a lot of people moving towards getting tight. If you hear NetSuite ads right now, they're all about getting tight. And that's not just about cutting costs. That's about being very methodical and very aware of how the dots connect in your business. Why do you have this position here? Are they adding value? Are they accelerating your opportunities, or are they just a cost center?
Yeah.
Or, what if you move them into some other role? Would that accelerate the business? Really, this concept of zero-based budgeting is not just simply cutting costs. That's kind of an easy way to think of it. You should cut costs that are excessive.
Yeah.
But it's also like, how do I line up? How do I systematize in the way that it makes an orchestration of the business instead of this cacophony of chaos that comes with times that are plentiful? When times are good, everybody just kind of does everything, and it feels a little chaotic. But you know what? The balance sheet goes up every month. You're selling more. Everybody's happy, and mistakes are really easy to cover up.
Yeah.
Mistakes will not be so easy to cover up, and so getting a real system. And I'm talking about anybody who's on track, 5 million plus as a seller, any service provider. Like, you've got to get your business tight, and you've got to think from systems on every single level that they exist. Anything that's repeatable should have some sort of system, some sort of documentation, and what we call a scorekeeping, right? No score, no game. And I think that people will start adopting. It won't be easy to execute. It'll take time, and every upgrade's a downgrade at first, but people are now starting to get focused on, how do I have a safety net, which is the system.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, what is the best way that people can reach you?
Well, gosh, I would say that, if people want to find me, they can find me on the Facebooks or the LinkedIn's or maybe
At
the
an event.
YouTubes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm generally around. I try to get to one or two events a quarter, and I'm going to go to Danny's Christmas party
Be
this
lovely to
year
see you.
if I can squeeze over.
And
So
you've got the is it the Festivus? What you're
yeah,
way
we're
back in?
doing so. Empowery has a Festivus event in early December. If you go to festivus.live, it's a website, festivus.live. Great speakers. It's just a real informal hangout. We're going to punch in some content, but a lot of just very easy networking. And I'm actually bringing down some of the people who are involved in my companies like Parsimony and SOP Box and Empowery and more, just to kind of talk about, well, here's our actual systems. You can look at it, you can play with it, you can do whatever you want. Just to try to get people prepared for 2023. So it's going to be fun. Snowy mountains in Sun Valley, Idaho, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun time.
Cool. And then I'll see you on December the 3rd, which is no snowy mountains, East London, pissing down the rain, cold, but you're going to get the British culture. That should be fun. But yeah, thank you again for joining us today, Steve. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Guys, thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you again very soon.